Hey, everybody. I'm excited about this conversation. I'm very happy to have Carl Smith joining today. Carl, I'm going to just let you intro
Hey,
yourself.
Tracey. I'm Carl Smith. I was a theater major, ended up in advertising, then started my own shop. And during that time, these two guys named Greg decided to get a bunch of people together. And that became the Bureau. And that's where you and I first met. And
Many years ago.
trying to figure out what the hell are we doing? We don't know how to run businesses. And today I serve at the pleasure of the community, I think is the easiest way to say it. And we're pretty big now. 1,500 people, 25,000 alumni.
Yeah. And this is the Bureau of Digital. And just for anybody who's listening who doesn't know about it, check it out. It is a genuinely wonderful community to be a member of. I am biased, of course, since I was there at the beginning. These are friendships and support systems and learning and fun and growth. And all of that's come out of this community. And I'm eternally thankful for it.
I tell everybody, the way I define it is we're a member-led, non-solicit community. And the beauty of it is that we're focusing on the human side of leadership. There are a lot of great folks out there teaching all about the business side, but we got to remember we're people that we're in these flesh shells and that sounded disgusting. I can make it through another day.
These damn meat suits.
Well, that's less disgusting.
Listen, you and I have known each other for a long time, but I do have so many questions. This podcast is a great reason to think about what are all the questions I actually really always wanted to ask Carl, but never thought to. When we met, you were running your own agency. And then you transitioned out of that. And now you're, as I jokingly referred to you as like the daddy of digital agencies. Now you're just here leading and nurturing and guiding. But you have such an interesting perspective because you see the agencies from the perspective that agencies are usually saying, hey, client, this is great because we have perspective that you don't have. We have this outside perspective. Well, you now have that perspective when it comes to agencies. And I wanted to start with how that has changed your mindset of how you lead, because you're leading a community now, not a company.
Yeah.
How has that changed you?
I'd say it's empowered me a lot because it shifted my focus from trying to run a transactional business where I'm offering a service to get compensated, and you worry and you aren't always 100% truthful, even though you want to be, because you got to make payroll and let's just get through this. And all of that's gone. Now I have this amazing group of humans that help each other, and I just guide it. I really do see myself as more the guide for the Bureau than anything else. And the beauty is, if somebody has to leave, it doesn't disrupt the whole ship. 20 more people need to come in. It doesn't overload the team. It really is an ebb and flow now. And it's about focusing on who's here and what they need and actually being able to spend hours every day trying to find solutions and connect people.
That I thought it'd be fun to do some rapid fire questions just to get started, to get warmed up. I wanted to, let's see, do some like either ors here for you. All right, you ready?
I am ready. Let's go.
All right. This is either or if you had to pick one to whatever, in whatever perspective you want to take it. Creative services or product?
Creative services.
Freelancers or full-time employees?
Yes. We're good full time.
Remote or in office?
Remote.
Retainer or project?
Retainer.
Flat structure or hierarchy?
Flat.
That's an easy one.
Lumpy or flat.
Fixed bid or paid discovery?
Paid discovery.
Value-based pricing or not?
Depends. I'm going to go that because we can't define value and the industry has to agree first.
Design systems, do people know what they are or not?
No.
Would you prefer a client that knows what they want or that they need guidance?
Needs guidance.
One huge client or 10 small clients?
10 small clients.
Retrospectives or just move on?
Retrospectives. Progressives.
Work-life balance or work-life integration?
work-life integration.
Take the risk or play it safe.
Take the risk.
All right. Good ones. Here's some ones I know people are going to want to know more about.
It changed. Some of them have changed.
Well,
I
yeah,
was
well,
projects for a long time.
yeah, it's interesting. You did say retainer. Now that everything's matured, do you see as much difference between digital agencies and traditional agencies? And if so, what do you think are the defining differences, good and bad?
I think it's really about how we see ourselves now as
Mhm.
individual companies, as individuals within a company. You can see over my shoulder here that it says the Bureau, not the Bureau of Digital.
Yeah.
This is the little sneak of the new branding that's coming out. And we dropped digital. Not everybody's happy about that. I have definitely heard from them.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it's like you go back to 1901 when electricity was first invented, or was first enabling us to do things like open doors just by getting close to them. And everybody said steam is a perfectly good technology. We don't have to use electricity. There were chief electricity officers. There were these people who were going to help you with your electric transformation. Sound familiar? And then it was just a part of everything. And you only noticed it when it was gone. You don't notice electricity unless it's not working. Otherwise, it's perfectly fine. I think digital is going that same way. Yeah, in the late 90s, early 2000s, all the way up until like 2012, 2015, I would say that digital was such a very profoundly different thing because nobody understood the canvas. And if you understood the canvas and you understood how to make it do things, then you had magic. It was very special. And we've ridden so many waves, right? So many waves have changed, like from responsive, mobile, just web standards, go all the way back to Jeffrey, right?
Yeah.
Mm. But now, if you are a PR company, you're probably managing social. Social doesn't exist on paper, it exists in the digital world. Do they understand React? Hell no. So I think there's different levels of digital, but I think everybody at some point impacts it. And the other thing is, if you're an architect, you have a creative output, you have a process, you have all these things. Yeah, you may not need to optimize it once you get it out there. You still need to worry about accessibility though. But the thing is, it's about the process more than it is the output. And that's where, as the human side, we need help. And when we communicate with other flavors of digital, we've learned so much, right? Because they came into it completely differently than we did. So I think it's everything and it's its own thing as well.
Yeah, it's been really interesting watching it mature and real. And I love that you've dropped digital. Even yeah, the whole notion of digital always it was always creativity and services and communication and marketing or brand or interactivity. We were facilitating things for clients in new arenas and as new methodologies became available, but it was still about how and why that client was saying and doing certain things with certain people. What do you think about we've seen a lot of waves. It's gotten choppier in the last 5 years. I remember there'd be long periods of time. First big disruption was probably once digital was underway and websites were like, okay, no one's arguing anymore that you need one. And we've gotten that under our hat. Then the iPhone rolled around and then there was responsive and then there was accessibility and then there were some different types of frameworks that started to become available. But nothing really was too disruptive the way that AI has been recently. And with AI coming off the heels of um, whatever Web 3.0 and what was the NP whatever's or non-fungible,
NFTs.
yeah, the NFTs. And there were a few like big hypes, and everyone was like, "Whoa, this is the new next thing." And meanwhile, AI just shows up and is like, "Forget everything that you thought you knew was coming." And it's alarming and it's also exciting. I joke that it's like the best of times and the worst of times because on one hand, it does feel like the beginning again. It feels like the way it was when, at least for me, when I started to get immersed in this, in the world of digital and websites and code and all of that and design back in the late 90s. It was like brand new pioneering environment. And now you've got AI here and it's just completely freaking everybody out. So I'd love to just get your 2 cents on the choppiness and AI's role in the current the current tsunami.
Yeah, I think AI is amazing. So I am on that side of ethical AI. Like, I do think there's a lot when we realize that it learned everything from our bad behavior. And it's feel like if you feed all of the prejudices into artificial intelligence, it's going to be prejudice.
Yeah.
All right. That's what it thinks we want. I think we are right at the beginning. I think they're going to be bad actors. Unfortunately, most of them be very powerful, influential governments and different things like that. This is the scary part. When it comes to what we're doing, I think it enables us to be more creative. It enables us to move faster. It enables, sure, charlatans, they're going to show up and they're going to throw shit out there and it's going to be horrible and we're going to notice it and
Yeah.
some people will go with it. But if we truly treat it as an input and we make sure that it allows us the ability to create something that is more powerful than we could before. Like you're in the community, so you've seen what JP Hollica did with that 30-second spot, probably.
Yes,
It's
yes.
all AI. It took him 100 hours. You have to realize it's still horrible for carbon. It's about 100 hours. You're destroying the planet. Sorry, JP, I love you. But they didn't have to travel anywhere. They didn't have to ship equipment. They didn't have to do all of these other things that in a traditional shoot you would have to do. There's no way they could have reported all those locations, let alone all the props. It had just been ridiculous. Now he says he could do it in a third of the time. But
Right.
once, and the system's going to learn. Let's say, just from the Bureau's perspective, the ability to bring a lot of disparate information together, make it cohesive, and get it out every week. We have over 1,000 conversations in that Bureau Slack. And when we tried over a year ago to use AI, the community pushed back and said, hey, that violates the Bureau oath because now you're taking a private conversation and sending it off to OpenAI.
Yeah.
And so if I'm trying to share something personal about a layoff, or maybe I'm going through a divorce, or maybe this is happening or that's happening, I don't want that shit getting out there. So now we have a lovely human named Meredith, and Meredith just goes through the document, find and replace, gets rid of anybody's personal information, feeds that more genericized version into ChatGPT. It does its best. She looks at it to remove stuff. And then Lori looks at it fresh. Nobody's seen it. And then it goes out to the community. And you know what? 70% of the people that get that email open it. On average, 88% read it, according to HubSpot. Perfect. But then at the same time, we can see every day when Grammarly tries to correct a word that's spelled correctly. And then you say, okay, let's do it your way. And then it says, haha, just kidding. Or when suddenly some crazy hallucination shows up, like this stuff's not ready for prime time, but it's better every day.
Yeah.
And if we don't learn to use it, it is going to make us replaceable and a little irrelevant.
I think it's definitely threatening people who may have gotten an early toehold into industry by taking jobs that will no longer be needed. Or just the grunt research or like the data migration or just those more of those admin-y type jobs. I think AI is great at replacing. And I do think it's also speeding things up. And what I'm curious about from your perspective is that do you see clients pausing because they know that the paradigm has shifted? They know that some things should be faster, some things should be cheaper. But have we reached this problem where now we can't tell clients they can't have the fast, the good, and the cheap on the golden triangle of things we used to tell them, like, well, you can have fast and good, but it won't be cheap, or you can have good and whatever.
Yeah, I don't think so,
Yeah.
because everybody's going to have the same tools
Yeah.
at their disposal. Some people are going to use different ones. Clients are going to realize that their competitors are also moving faster. So it's not just going to be about getting the thing done and getting the thing out in front of customers. It's going to be about an ongoing race.
Yeah.
And now, as you get to a certain point, other people have caught up with you. You're going to have to keep moving forward. It's also part of why I think retainers are more important. Clients are never, except for the bigs, most mid-sized small businesses are not going to invest internally on these tools. And if they do, they're going to be out of date in 6 months and they're going to get tired of it. And so they're going to hire specialists. And so what I think is interesting is you watch how it's coming into our industry and SEO just pounced on it. Yeah. You look at Will Reynolds, Dale Bertrand, Rand Fishkin, Mike King, they are crushing because they know match and they understand algorithms and they love the challenge and they see the results. So this is why they got into it. I think we're all going to still need those kinds of partners. And then we're going to have our agency partners and our agency team that is going to have to be much more adaptive. Favorite things today is Lori. I told her, I was like, hey, we've got to get all these speaker information, the talk titles, all this kind of stuff. Don't make them work. Just tell them to send us a title and just some bullets, and then we'll share with them the talk. Or using Chat GPT, call it Chat. It's easier. And so it went out, and somebody said, this is great. And she got excited. She was like, I did it. Look at what I did. And she never, ever in a million years would have tried to write something and send it. She wouldn't have had the confidence. So I think it also enables some of the folks that we've always seen as checklist grinders to start easing into some of that creative stuff and rounding themselves out. And as a human, if you accept that it can make you better and allow you to connect with other humans in a more realistic and just loving way, I think it's beautiful.
Yeah. It's gonna be an interesting couple of years for sure.
Yeah. But to your point, the other side of it is, I think clients aren't necessarily expecting everything to be faster and cheaper yet because they don't fully understand it.
Yeah.
They will get smarter. I always liked having smart clients because they pushed me. And you know me, I like to have a rationale for every reason, every decision we're doing. And I back into a lot of them. That's amazing. Let's back into a rationale and get this out of here. So for me, when I start thinking about AI, and not just language models, but all of the different areas that it can help us and do things, that's where I start to think, yeah, certain roles aren't going to be what they were. Video editing is not going to be what it was. I had a great call yesterday with Peril. And I said, y'all are putting AI in. Is it just a bolt on? What's this going to be? And imagine now if a project manager didn't have to do all of the Gantt charts. Imagine if they didn't have to if they could actually say, you know what, Tim works a little better when he's under pressure. Maria really needs you to let her go the wrong path for a day and then she's going to come back. What if we could start to see the different personalities, not your Myers-Briggs, maybe, but then you can start to assemble teams based on how they're going to work the best together. You can have an outside entity looking at everything going, this worked better in this formation.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
it really does. I think AI offers an opportunity right now for everything that all the process, all of the structure that we tried to build up or cobble together to get through things that was conformity. But we gotta do it this way because we've gotta have, something that's our process, and not everyone works that well in that process. I do think AI is offering a lot more flexibility and a lot more productivity in different kinds of ways depending on how you work. So I think it's exciting as well, especially from a creative perspective, because I think
Yeah.
that it allows you to make a lot more progress in your thinking, and it's all about how you use it. But I think if you are using, let's say, ChatGPT to challenge your ideas, to provide different perspectives, it's just a constant brainstorm partner, or Perplexity to do deeper research. It's
Yeah.
just a game changer, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think what we'll find is that, to your point, we are the human prompt. We will ask things differently. We'll look for things differently. We'll flavor our words a little bit differently, and we're going to get different results. Everyone who's just coming in generic is going to end up in the middle. And then you're going to be chasing the person who did it a little different. We see it on LinkedIn right now. Somebody gets some crazy response and engagement, and the LinkedIn algorithm wakes up and goes, I like you. And then everybody's suddenly chasing that. let's not chase stuff. Let's be chased. I think that's the key is that we have to bring our own original thought into it while everybody else is just leaning on artificial thought.
Yeah, and when the algorithms are determining what is seen as the leader, that is a topic for another conversation.
Oof.
Um,
Those-
Problematic for sure. But I do think part of what I'm seeing right now too, and maybe as a byproduct of COVID and going through the lockdowns and now seeing this acceleration happening and just again so much turbulence is that speaking of COVID, I am coming off of just a recent infection with COVID. So I do apologize.
Sorry, I'm glad
It's
you
sound
got
quality, but anyway, yeah, I'm feeling alive today for the first time in 5 days, so that's good. But I do think that people are gonna start backing away from trying to live at the openings of all of these fire hoses and hopefully get back to relationships and community and the things that we know are real, that we can have a material impact on, that we can have some control or influence over versus the I feel like it's a front row seat to panic every day if you want it to be.
yeah.
And nobody can last that long in that seat. So it'll be, I do think it'd be very interesting to see where we are in 6 months, let's say.
And I think in a few years, we're going to find a lot more of us being solopreneurs. A lot more of us, I think, are going to end up in that role.
Yeah.
And then community and coming together with humans is going to be so much more important because we're already seeing the cocooning like, with remote work. And even with folks who are going back into the offices, this enables us to be more self sufficient without the need necessarily for the structure of a business. And that I think is going to be the really interesting thing to watch is how does that play out? Because then you're going to have communities as watering holes, places where we all get together, find something and chase it together. So
Yeah. It's interesting. During the rapid fire, I asked freelancers or full time employees, and you ended up on full time employees. And that I'm curious about that because being someone who's built agencies and is building one right now again, um, there is this sense of the team that you're building and the people that you want to be, and of course, people come and go. But it's different than bringing people in for projects. I'd love to just hear a little bit more about what you think about that in the midst of everyone becoming a solopreneur.
yeah, so I wasn't allowed to say both.
Yeah.
If you look at the way that our engine, we had a small core team. The team was 8 people. And the reason those full-time employees were there was because each person had a specific skill set and passion that they could carry forward into a project. So yeah, you do get to that as a solopreneur, you are going to get to that place where you can only do one thing at a time. But when you have a core team, I've got Lori and Meredith, I know every day I don't have to worry about this thing or that thing because they're doing it. Now, maybe that's connecting up with a different entity in the future, but with freelancers, you have that opportunity to grow and shrink without impacting somebody's life. And that to me is critical. I think it's really important. Like just right now with the Bureau's rebranding, it's me and Lori and Meredith, but we've got support from Kathy at Metis. We have Bill Kinney over at Focus. We have Wayne Pelletier at Renaissance. We've got everybody coming together for this, and then we'll all go back out because we couldn't do it on our own. I think that a similar model is what we're going to see. You're bringing in these different experts, but you still have it, solopreneur, small team. I could see either way.
Yeah.
You still need people that are going to be able to help when you get sick. When things happen.
Yeah. We were just on our stand up this morning. Someone was commenting that they'd never felt as much at ease at being sick because there was a good team member there to shout out to Nicole, who was making sure everything was getting done. Um, well, that brings me. People ask you questions all the time, all day long, in your role. What are some questions you wish people would ask you that they don't?
What's the best way to partner with other agencies? We've done webinars on it. We've done workshops on it. I think what Brian Williams or Viget has done, the way they've set up their partnership program is a great model. It's the kind of thing I wish more people would look at. Partnering versus growing, I think is really important. And if you partner with somebody long enough and you do fall in love, sure, merge, do the thing.
Yeah.
But that for me, I think is one of the questions. Another one would be just when should I fire a client? The phrase, and we've talked about this before, but I think way back in take it all the way back to advertising, take it pre-web, take it all the way back. The lack of confidence of most creators is stifling. The inability to understand that you have a value. You are not lucky to have your job. You are skilled and people need you, and you need to exchange that talent for cash. And it's got to be a good exchange rate. I don't think even today people get it. Some do, and we look at them like they're arrogant. So I think we also have to realize that some people just need to stand up for themselves, and the client does not have control over your life just because they have hired you to do something. If anything, you should have more control over theirs because they came to you with a need. You needed money, they needed skill.
Yeah. If only we could absorb whatever lawyers have managed to tap into.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Which actually leads me to the whole conundrum of value-based pricing versus hourly. And I love the idea of it. And especially with AI now in the mix and the speed of which a lot of stuff can be done, really rethinking how agencies charge for the work that they're going to do. How do you see that playing out right now?
Yeah, I think it's still a hot mess, but I think value based makes the most sense. It's just that we don't have a real definition. I think I've shared this with you before, but we did research a few years back and we had 140 shops thinned in their definition of value based pricing. I could only get it down to 17 definitions. And I'm like, if we can only get to 17, then we're not going to be able to explain it. I think Dan Moll said he wrote a book on value based and he said you need to win more than you lose. So he's acknowledging you're not going to know the value. And I think the biggest challenge becomes how do you define value? Is it what you're going to save the client? Okay. Is the client going to be honest with you? Are they going to share that with you? And what if you don't save them that amount of money? Are you going to give money back? Because that really feels like the way it should work. The other thing I would say is you can bill hourly with the value based hour. It's like lawyers charge $700 an hour. Some charge $300 an hour. Why? Because some have more value than others.
Yeah.
I think that's the other thing. It's not, you're not locked into one thing, but it's sexy to say, and coaches and consultants love to lean on it. And so Nick Petrosky at Promethean and I are doing this show called Agency Mythbusters. And we took that on. Does hourly pricing limit profitability? And I convinced him that it does not. But I also think value-based makes a lot of sense. You look at Aaron Draplin, right? Draplin will do a first draft of a logo in the kickoff meeting. Then he puts it in a folder for 2 weeks because he knows the client's poor little brain can't handle the fact that he just cranked it out. And then he contacts him and he goes, hey, I'm almost done. So value-based for him, absolutely. He is at the top of his craft. If somebody wants to work with you to do something, I would value-based all day long. If it is charging $500 an hour versus or trying to set a set fee. But if they want a certain outcome and they've asked you if you can do that outcome, that's not value-based. Right? You're not the value at that. So for me, that's really it. And then you've got all these in-betweens. Like you can go value-based on some parts and time and materials on others. It's really about risk. Who's going to assume the risk?
Yeah. And how do you determine what success is? If you're like, okay, what is success? What's the value associated with that success? And then what do we agree, right? Would you be willing to pay the 10% of that outcome to get you there, guaranteed, all of that, which is lovely in theory, but I haven't really figured working well. And part of it is because the end destination is changing all the time. And a lot of it is subjective.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What does success look like when you're talking about brand or marketing or a website or even a product? And who's willing to say we can guarantee it when there are so many other factors at play?
And the other thing is the market. Okay, we can define it. That's a big problem. But if the market won't support it, if the market says your value-based price is 10 times higher than another shop with an amazing reputation who has done great work for big names, you're out of the game. And I don't think that's necessarily bad. We almost got hired by Amazon when I was running Engine. And this was a product that they had to get done in a certain time frame. Okay, check that box.
Yeah.
We've got this tenseness of getting done at a certain time. They had to make sure that it worked. It was a new mobile version of a traditional website, and you had to be able to pinch zoom on mobile because it's fabric and you need to see the texture. So I went back and told the team, and they actually told me, the person in charge of the project said, we will lose $3 million if we don't get this done in the next 6 weeks. So I'm back to the team and I said, this is the perfect case for us to try value-based. We know the amount, we know the timing, and they'll actually be able to see the results. So we went back and I said, we can do that for $300,000. I says 10% of what you're going to save, and we're going to have to work really hard. And the woman in charge actually looked at me and she said, I am just going to hire some designers and developers and flog them within inches of the life. And I won't forget, I replied, thank you
Yeah.
so much for the information. Have a nice day.
Yeah.
I think that's it. It's like, there are going to be times you walk in and you're like, okay, this makes sense. They want us. They have this need, and we can, I'll also say it almost always makes sense for e-com.
Yeah.
We're perfectly positioned to be able to say, yes, we did improve your conversion rate.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's so many different, when I talk with clients now, let's say it's a fundraising client. There's a road there. There's a conversation to be had there around being paid based on what you're able to raise above and beyond. And there's a conversation that's not being had around investment in
Yeah.
the effort when there can be that, when it is dollars, that's the outcome. And I think that's an interesting conversation. But again, I think a lot of people are still stuck in this is the only way we craft these kinds of engagements, and this is the only way we work with partners due to.
And I will say, some people define value-based as fixed bid with a higher profit margin tacked on.
Yeah.
And I think you can totally do that. But yeah, I think the reality is it depends. At the end of the day, the toughest part of all of this is attribution. Can you really show that the work you did made that difference? In some cases, yeah.
Now, that attribution is a good segue into the question of, right, wh- now that you are in the position you are in to see agencies, it takes ego to start an agency. It takes ego to take those kind of risks. But egos are also very fragile, and they can cause people to not see the forest for the trees. Um, is there a reoccurring theme there that you have seen that's gotten owners into trouble or has benefited them when it comes to having that unique kind of ego?
Yeah, I think, and I'll say, when I was running my shop, my ego was up there, boy. It's like, it's still there. We hang out, but that it was really there. And I would say that a lot of what we did from the beginning was just me being a force of nature, just not allowing us not to get that project or not to expand outside of Little Jacksonville, Florida, or not to, we had to do these things. But then later, I think my ego got us in trouble because I would go on firing sprees of clients, not my team. I would just be like, I don't like the way you said that. Not that badly.
Yeah.
That far from it, he said, sounding like a weird cartoon character for her. But I'll also say, just from watching the community, and this is reality television for me, a lot of it, but I have seen someone who pretty much, and I will say manhandled, because it was manhandled their company up to great heights. And when clients wanted to leave or said they weren't getting the right results, would pretty much tell them they needed to keep going and that they hadn't tried hard enough. They hadn't gone long enough. Always put it back on them. Eventually, everybody got tired of that.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, because eventually there was another option. And when that other option came on the scene, it was very attractive because it looked nice.
Yes.
So I think you can have a tremendous ego and be a very nice person. And that they aren't opposites.
Yeah.
But I will say ego early is important because it's a force of nature. It allows you to put on those reality distortion goggles that Steve Jobs used to talk about. It's like he has to not believe in what is right now because he's trying to get to something that hasn't been.
Yeah.
To me, I think we're all doing the same thing. At the same time, Project Horseman's girlfriend famously said, when you look at the world through rose-colored glasses, red flags just look like flags.
Mm.
And for me, that's the other side of it. You still have to know enough of reality that you don't drive off the cliff.
Yeah. In agency, especially in small agency world, there's the joke that everybody's 2 payrolls away from going out of business, so that it's a short runway to an outcome in a lot of agencies' realities. What do you think are the red flags that most people miss that you've seen?
I would say it's definitely got to do around operations. There are things that are just broken, but if cash flow is good enough, you don't notice them or you refuse to look at them. But I think a lot of when it comes to that, it's because of humans, right? We don't invest near as much on soft skills as we do in hard skills. And the fact that it's called soft skills just bugs the crap out of
I know.
me. There's nothing harder. And I was at an event with Margaret Lee, and she asked the table, about 30 people, how many of you have fired somebody for a hard skill? They could not do the thing they were hired to do. And two hands. And she said in the last year, two hands went up. They said, how many of you fired somebody for a soft skill? They weren't a good team player. They aggravated others. They were constantly a source of negativity. Half the hands in the room went up.
Yeah.
These weren't just agencies. These were big in-house teams too. But I think that really becomes a huge part of it is operations is so valuable when you get in the right flow. You can't really scale an agency, but you can optimize it. And if you're going to optimize it, it involves having people that feel Daniel Pink drive. Right? They have to feel that they are empowered. They have to feel that they are in control of their own destiny at some level. And to do that, they have to be good humans without disrupting the ship.
So do you think it's one of the problems is just that people tolerate toxicity in the team, or that they're just ignoring those realities because it's not a hard skill? It's not a, I can't pinpoint that they're messing up, so we let them stay? What do you think?
I think it's since the pandemic. Before the pandemic, I think we would hire and fire a lot quicker. We weren't worried about talent. We weren't worried about limits of who's available, any of that kind of stuff. And we were able to see a lot clearer. But since the pandemic, the ups and the downs and the ups and the downs and the feeling that we were crushing it when really we just got government subsidies. I mean, oh my God, every year is going to be like this. It just makes it a mess to really know anymore. And I think we're all just a little shell shocked.
Yeah.
So we don't know when talent's not going to be available again. And then I'll say this too, and saying talent sounds a little, I'm looking down my nose at it, but no, the people who actually create what it is, it's the back of the house, if you're from the restaurant business, they have woken up and they're standing up for themselves. So just
Yeah.
like I said earlier, how we still don't have a lot of confidence, it's changed for the next wave. They do have that confidence. They are saying, I'm worth this. And they get mad when it's suddenly not available. I feel like you gotta realize you can't get mad and leave and then not be happy we're not hiring when you come back.
You know,
So I think that's it. I think it's just whiplash from everybody's looking for a job. Nobody's looking for a job. Everybody's looking for a job. And so just let 2,000 people go.
yeah, I'm amazed at the salaries that people want for junior level or entry level positions now compared to 4 or 5 years ago. And I don't think inflation has the cost of living has not increased that much. Yes, it is bad. It is hard, but it is interesting. And maybe that's because the reality is a lot of people can make it on their own as solopreneurs or as freelancers. And so if they're gonna take a full-time job somewhere, they want all the perks and all the safety and all of that. But it's been interesting. That's been really choppy over the years as well.
Yeah. I think that also gets back to the whole putting a ring on the finger when you find that right person,
Yeah.
trying to make them that full-time employee, especially when you realize how much just fraud and scams and all the things that are starting to happen with AI, allowing people to look like they're somebody else, to respond with information they may not have. Through, we had a situation at one camp where somebody explained that there was like a Russian side hustle going on where they were acting like they were Americans
Yeah.
and they were doing the work, but all the money was getting sent over to Russia. And they got contacted by the FBI and said, "Hey, we need you to keep doing that because we're trying to track this down." So we need to see each other. But
Yeah. I think that bodes well for the small teams,
right.
the slow growth. That was the other thing that while there's this speed element that feels is so present right now with technology and with just the state of the world, there's also the complete opposite, I feel like, that really needs to be attended to, which is that slower, more purposeful, more human, like some good things do take time. They do. And I think whether it's building a team or forming a relationship with a client, it's just like any other relationship. And they're not transactional, but we are still living in a transactional world of business. So,
And the work that we do, because it is creative, we also put some of ourselves into it. So we're really involved and engaged in the outcome because we feel like we are part of it. And that means that we're going to have to be able to get upset with each other sometimes.
yeah.
Lori and I got into it a little bit yesterday. Doesn't happen often. I apologize because I know who's doing who the favor, but it's one of those things. If she had been a freelancer helping out with back office stuff and with logistics on events and stuff, I might not have been able to be as honest as how it was feeling. She may not have felt empowered to push back.
Yeah.
So I think that's the other side of it is when you are a creative entity, when you're trying to create something, you're not just moving widgets from place to place. You need a team that you can be emotional and vulnerable and angry and all of the things with within reason. But you can't do that necessarily with a patchwork of a team.
Yeah. Yeah. Some of these, here's another question for you along these lines. What are a few of, 'cause I'm sure there's more than one, things that people keep bringing up as we need to solve this problem. And you've just seen it. If you could just send it to the sun and it never comes back again to be discussed because it is just simply like the solution is like communication or whatever. What are a few of those things that you've just seen that are never going to be solved?
It's interesting, but I want to say, and this is a kind of adjacent to the question, but if there's a tool out there that already does this, I just want to find the tool that does it the way I want it done,
Yeah.
or that sort of thing. I think that's a huge one. But in terms of the thing that keeps coming up, if we could just fix this one thing, I think you nailed it. It really is culture and people, and everybody's trying to figure out how do we create culture in a distributed world. I think it just creates itself. It's different. It's okay. Let it go. It's be the happy person you want to be and attract other happy people. Yeah, that's a better plan, but it's a great question. I'm not sure I have a really solid answer.
Fair. You may have touched upon the answer to this already with the FBI investigation, but what's the weirdest bureau experience you've had?
Oh, wow. Weird or
Your choice, dealer's choice.
weird. What the hell was that? I've definitely had some of those moments where somebody just showed who they really were in front of the group and nobody knew it.
Oh, a
They did.
reveal.
It was a little brutal. It was one of these situations where somebody in the room defends just like a not ethical idea. Now, and I will say, as a community grows, these things are going to happen. It doesn't mean that person was necessarily a bad person, but they were in that moment, they were not a human I wanted to hang out with.
Yeah.
I'll also say we've gone through the whole poaching thing. We've gone through the whole mergers that didn't happen. There've been a lot of things like that. But I'll also say, and it's happened to me personally, and then also at another event, you get seated next to somebody who you've had public fights with. Absolutely did not take their shit in a public forum. And now you're sitting next to each other.
Oh, that's awkward.
And we'll have to be like, okay, one of us has to say, are we cool? Are we
Yeah.
okay? Can we do this? Can we sure? In another situation though, it was somebody who had been a whistleblower on somebody else
Ah,
at a large corporation. And they were not sitting next to each other, but neither one knew the other would be in the room. And so we now let people know about 3 weeks out who's going to be there.
yeah.
So we can hopefully avoid that.
Yeah. That's a good idea.
And those are definitely some of the things. I'll also say having couples together, like human, like personal couples, not business couples. Sometimes that can get to a weird place because we've had husbands and wives, we had wives and wives, we had husbands and husbands, and they end up like getting into some sort of a little rift because running a business and having a relationship is really hard. From what I've seen,
Preach into the choir.
my wife worked for a company for about 9 months, and the day she came in and quit, we all celebrated because we knew she hated us. So I'd say that's it. It's people who have a past that are reunited. And then you always have some folks who have some sort of substance abuse issues. So you have to be really conscious of it and also try to make sure you're not setting them up to fail.
Yeah.
I think in the early days, we didn't realize that. We'd have margarita happy hours at 3 p.m. that are brought into the room, and that poor human can't escape.
Yeah.
And then the questions are going to come, and then, oh, you're not having a. So I think I was honest, we got a lot smarter about it.
Yeah.
It
I guess
can get be difficult.
that's a lot to I'm sure you've learned a lot of lessons along the way about curating and organizing groups of humans for these intense gatherings and so many logistics.
When, when we were in Seattle and the pilot who was supposed to pick us up from the sound when we were out doing whale watching, there were 3 seaplanes that were supposed to come get us. And the third one, the pilot was drunk and they wouldn't let him fly. Oh, seeing the third of the event got stranded on the sound. Luckily, Brett Harned was with them, and they managed to get to a place where they could get to a bus, where they could get across a bridge, where they could come back. But I have never, ever, that my heart, I think they had more fun than we did because we were sitting there at this fancy restaurant worried about them. They were ordering pizzas and taking cases of beer onto this party bus.
They were having an adventure. Yeah. Sometimes it is when I'm a big believer that like when things go wrong, that's your best opportunity. That's your best opportunity to
Are we
for
going to be Pinky or are we going to have an adventure?
yeah, or what's gonna happen now that things have gone wrong?
Yeah.
Because there's nothing more boring than complacency and everything just goes great.
Yeah.
And that's not life either. If you think it is, then you're in for a rude awakening, I guess.
Don't have.
It'll happen. Back to what you said about you wished more agencies asked you about how to partner and they don't.
Mhm.
Do you feel like there's advice that you give over and over again from your perspective that just gets ignored?
Yeah, I think the main one is that you can't be equal partners going into a partnership. It's going to have to shift from project to project. And you need to basically set up ahead of time and role play. Say, okay, so I bring in this project and it's got these needs, and you're an expert at that, and we're an expert at this, but we need to have one project manager. We need to have one account manager. So I think once they can understand that and also realize that your best partners, you're not going to have a ton of overlapping services. Sometimes people partner up because one shop had a service the other one didn't, but all the other services are shared, and then they just can't work together that well. One company needs to be in charge of the financial side and the operation side. But you've got to have a level of trust, and your agreement has to detail this out. The client cannot feel it. I think they need to know it, but they can't feel it, because you can do the whole super friends. We're bringing in the best when it comes to recruitment. We're bringing the best when it comes into fundraising. We're bringing in the best. So we're going to give you this super friends, but you only have to work with us, and then we'll take care of everything else. But then you also have to have a plan for everybody did the work, but the client didn't pay. Now, does that mean that the person sitting at the front of the ship is responsible for paying everybody else?
Yeah.
Let's talk about it before it happens. And I think that's the biggest thing. People don't talk about things before they happen. They just dive into it, whistling Dixie, as we say here in the South. You were whistling Dixie out her butthole. Okay. Then you just realize, oh, there's so many things we did not anticipate, we didn't plan for. So I think if you're going to partner with another agency, I've got these questions. I should share these. I should publish it. But here are like the questions you should ask each other so that you can make sure you get on the same page. One of my favorites is, what are the clients you are not willing to work with? What are the industries? I'm not going to work with handguns. I'm not going to work with cigarettes. I'm not going to work with anything that is openly anti-human.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, how does that play out if you don't do that up front? What do you see happen? What are the negative outcomes that that poor planning in partnering ends up resulting in?
You may not be familiar with this, Tracy, but a lot of times when you're working with a client, things go wrong. It just happens.
No, not for me, Carl.
I know. I think it's not unlike what would happen if it was just one company. Somebody is going to look for somebody to blame, and they're not going to look at themselves most of the time. So if it was just your company, a project manager may blame a developer. But now if that developer works in another company that you're partnering with, now your company or shots have been fired. And so now you're going to have this little issue that you probably could have talked through. What do we do if the client's late on a deliverable? Oh, we write the pause clause. Oh no, we just hustle and get it done.
Or what if the partner is late on the deliverable?
Exactly. And how does that impact your financial part of this? And how
Yeah.
does I th- that's really it. It is just quick to lose trust
Yeah.
when you're partnered with somebody and that challenge comes up. You know this. I think it was Kevin Hoffman who had the book on kickoff meetings.
Hmm.
And he had that question there. What do you think we're going to do to screw this up? I think partnering agencies should have that kickoff and they should ask each other. I think they should dig in and they should share the worst they've ever been and the best they've ever been. And just put it on the table. Be vulnerable before you ever get in front of a client. But people wait to partner until they realize they can't do it on their own. So it's also, they're just looking for who can fill the void. They're not looking for who should they work with.
Yeah, and I think it's hard to partner because who do you trust? And how do you avoid getting into that blaming, finger pointing area that, yeah, I've been there. And it's who's telling me the truth?
Exactly.
And when it's a big, complicated project and everybody's pointing fingers at each other, instead of trying to solve it, honestly,
Yeah.
you can get into a real bad situation real fast.
Real.
Yeah. Oh, man. Yeah. People are messy.
I feel bad for my therapist. I do.
I'm glad you have a therapist because that was my other question is you have to provide so much support for so many people who are going through a stressful existence. Running agencies is not for the faint of heart. It is not a predictable, reliable, boring existence. And you have to get into a lot of it. How do you not get so sapped and so just exhausted by it and burned out by it that you're just ready to throw in the towel? Because I would imagine it's exhausting.
It is. I've explained it as riding a Bronco bull that is just trying to kick me off.
A
And
wild stallion, Carl?
from time to
Perhaps?
time, it turns and it locks eyes with me and goes, I love you. And then it goes back to kicking my ass. And that's what running a community is like. Yes. But
Yeah.
honestly, I'm addicted to it. It's so much fun on the back of the bull. Um, I think there are a few things here. One, sometimes both people in the disagreement or the challenge will reach out to me independently. And one thing I've learned is nobody knows any of these conversations I've had, not even my most inner circle. I would not share this because somebody sometime is just not going to realize and they didn't share. I think also I have to be very careful not to take a stance, but to be a founding board and to let talk and to give advice if asked. And I feel that I have information worth giving. But the way that I keep myself fresh is I really don't take it personally. Even if it's a friend in pain, I try to help. And then I lean on the fact that I was able to help, that I was able to say something. I've been way into stoicism for a few years now. This is actually Frankie. Frankie is my memento mori, who reminds me that I could leave life right now. So when I am feeling a certain way or in a certain conversation, I'll ask myself, is this the way I want to be remembered? Is this the last thing I want to have done before I shuffle off? So run a lot and journal a tremendous amount and meditate. I do all the hippie things. And yeah, so all of that really helps. There are times where I just, if we slammed phones down anymore, I would slam my phone down. There are times where I'm just so angry at the way somebody acted or something that somebody did that I have to just give myself a break. I'm
Yeah.
lucky also in the way my days are scheduled. I can take 4 hours and just be by myself. And if I didn't have that luxury, if I wasn't able to just breathe without outside interference for a while, I think it would be harder. But I also know when I'm getting ready to have a bad call, I schedule it towards the end of the day.
Yeah.
No, that's going to be the last thing I am capable of doing before I move on.
Before we wrap up this conversation, again, from your perspective and everything that you see and are on the front row for these days, if you had to give an agency a general bit of advice to all the agencies out there, is there a general bit of advice that you would give at this time of March 2025 with all of the things that are going on? What would your words of wisdom be?
Slow down and think about it. Give yourself a chance. You're not going out of business today. And more than likely, you're not going out of business unless you decide to close up. So slow down, think about it, and ask yourself before each of these decisions that you're looking at, do I want to work at that company? Because I see a lot of owners who suddenly they make this quick switch. They see things are getting better and then they're miserable because that wasn't their passion. That wasn't why they started what they did. So we just say go slow and make sure you're keeping yourself in mind as well, just doing everything for your team.
That's great. That's great. Anything else on your mind that you want to chat about in particular that I haven't asked you about?
I want to thank you. Those early camps, I remember we were, I think, in Minneapolis and we were walking down the street and I was doing really well. The company was doing really well. And you warned me. You actually said, hey, what are you going to do if it doesn't keep going? What are you going to do if it turns? And you were the first person to break through that ego that I had of everything going so well. And if you hadn't done that, I don't think I would have been as prepared when it did turn.
Oh, right.
Thank you so much for that. I'm not crying.
You're welcome. I've been accused of maybe being sometimes pessimistic, or an overly realistic, but I think it's just that I like to look at things from all different angles. And so I never want to take anything at face value. And I think things are complicated and there's a lot of luck at play. There's a lot of timing. There's a lot of things that are outside of our control that can have big influences on our lives. And I don't know that necessarily thinking about them ahead of time really can prepare you for it. But I do think not taking things for granted is something that's important because that will make, I think, make you more thoughtful about every decision you make instead of just falling into, this is how I've always done things because this is how they've always gone. And so I won't consider the complexity that could be the situation.
Yeah. People who are stupidly optimistic like me, we need realists in our world.
Well, you're not stupidly optimistic, Carl.
It's worked out.
Yeah,
Eh,
with them, or you wouldn't keep going.
Yeah.
If you could go back to running an agency again, would you?
My ego would, my brain would not. That fighting for the next thing with a team. I miss all of the trappings of work.
Yeah. Yeah, there's something really fun about it, but it is very exhausting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Uh,
I'll say that in my other relationships, they're much healthier now
Mm.
in agency.
yeah.
And I'm actually lucky to be married the way dirt running that agency was.
Yeah. Good advice and something for all agency folks to think about there. And I just, again, just want to encourage everyone who has not checked out the Bureau. If they're looking for community and good, straight shooting advice from people who've been through a lot of different situations, I think it's just a great community. And again, it's not every other person is trying to sell you a massage or however some of those are old
That
networking
was
events.
another weird thing that happened at camp.
Speaking of,
We had the massage break. That was
oh, I liked that one. But yeah, it's been great to grow and go through life with friends who share the trials and tribulations of work. And when work doesn't feel just like a job, it's definitely been a good ride. And I've been glad to be riding alongside of you and a lot of the other members of the Bureau for all these years.
thanks, Tracy.
Thank you for your wisdom and your stories and your perspective, as always.
All
And,
right.
and until we talk again, thanks for joining.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Bye.